Hi guys, Yacca here. So we're heading up part 4 of the card review, and we have a bunch of more cards to go through. And as always, it's going to be really interesting. There's a bunch of good things to go through. Of course, there are also cards which I rate low or do not score as high. A short disclaimer on that: that's not because I don't like the cards or that they will not see play eventually in a future expansion or anything like that. It's just that they need a bunch more support than what I see at the moment. Sometimes over the course of this card review that I do, I stop the review before all the cards are actually revealed. So when I state that there might be like a 2-star card which needs a bunch of support, then there actually might, towards the end of the reveal of the 135 cards, there are enough support for the card actually to work. And that's the fun part, because then the star rating that I made in the very beginning, that's completely shamed, and that's also fun to look at afterwards to see how this how the support for the cards that I deemed were not good at the point in time that I saw them, they actually work. But with that short disclaimer, I think we should look at some more cards and see what we have installed for us when the expansion hits early August. Alright, first one that we will go through is the Playmaker. The Playmaker is a 3 mana, 4 attack, 3 health card, which states after you play a rush minion, you summon a copy of that rush minion with 1 health remaining. And as you can see, this is something I'm quite thrilled about. You have your Dr. Krastinov, which buffs your weapon. It's a rush minion, and it buffs your weapon as you attack with it. So just dropping the Playmaker, Dr. Krastinov, and then you summon another Dr. Krastinov with 1 health remaining. It buffs your weapon with 2 attack and 2 durability. Of course, it's a 2-card combo, and you need to have a weapon equipped, but that's in constructed. That's kind of the stuff that you want to play with and play into. So you have the weapons available to do this, there are, of course, other combos like this. If you, for instance, just drop this on 3, and then on 4 you have your I can't remember the exact name of it, but the mummy that rushes, that has 3/2 stat line and reborn. So you can drop 2 mummies which are 3/2 and the other 3/1 because it's damaged, of course, and then reborn, and then you can push 12 damage to board. And that's just a consecutive between you drop this as a 3-drop, and if it sticks around, then you can drop the Restless Mummy, that's the name of it. Then you have a bunch of stats. So there's different use cases for this, and Rush is a mechanic that is right throughout the game as it is right now. Therefore, this is definitely good. You'll just have this one sticking around, or you use this in combination with other cards, and I think it suits quite well the playstyle of Warrior as it is right now. There's also the legendary 4 mana 4/4 Rush minion. Again, the name eludes me a little bit. Might come to me. But when that dies, you shuffle in the Prime, this, when you summon the Prime, each and every time you overkill with that one, then you get, or destroy a minion, I think it's overkill, then you destroy overkill a minion, you get 10 armor, and you'll get 2 of those mixed into your deck. So this is both kind of a mid-range tool, but also a control tool. It will definitely find some kind of space in an existing or in one of the future decks we'll have developed in Constructed. In Arena, it's really just a very solidly statted 3-drop. So if you have no minions, no rush minions, you're just as fine dropping this on 3. And it has an upper use case, which is really powerful in Arena, because it allows you to Rush minions are really good because it affects the board as you drop them, and this doubles that effect more or less. Therefore, this is a really powerful card in Arena, and you don't even mind picking it if you don't have that many rush synergies. It's just really good anyway. So 4 stars in Constructed and in Arena as well. The next one is actually quite it's quite funny. It's Archwitch Willow. Archwitch Willow is a 9 mana, 7 attack and 7 health minion. And from a stats point of view, she's not that great. But that's not really what reflects the stars rating. Because the effect, the battle cry that she has, is really powerful on this legendary minion. So the battle cry states, you summon a random demon from your hand. So if you have a demon in hand, it's summoned on the board, but also a random one from the deck. And just looking at the amount of stats that you can make available on this is through the roof. So this is kind of a finisher, like a board push finisher card. You have actually a very good death rattle demon at the moment, which lingers around if it's dealt with. So why do I not rate this as high? For 9 mana you need the card to do a lot, and it actually does. It's just the amount of support that it has at the moment. I looked through the demons that is available in the neutral pool and for Warlock as well. And there could be 5 or 6 demons which can at all be viable to play. And that kind of limits you. So those are the top end demons of the deck. Or of the class which is available for Warlock. And therefore you can't really run demons which are that much worse than this, because you don't really want to drop 2/3/2 Flame Imps for 9 mana. I'm not sure if that's the worst case, but if you run those cheap demon cards as well, so it needs to be like a big demon Warlock deck. It could be viable, but it needs a bunch of more support. As I mentioned, there are 5 or 6 demons which could be run, and not perfect for it. There's actually only maybe a legendary demon, the way I remember it, and also one other card which are really good to be run like this. But then if you say, well, it doesn't really matter, you just run those 2 demons and then you get both. Well, that's actually not the case. Sometimes you need to drop the demon, this taunt demon, before in order to hold off some aggression. Then you only summon one, either from the deck or from the hand, or as sometimes you've seen with Ancestral Mysteries, where you draw out a secret from the deck. If you have both secrets in hand, the effect is not as powerful. There it's not even existing. But if you have drawn both demons, or if you have both demons in the deck, you're not summoning both to the board. And this is one of the... So you need more than just this 1 or 2 demons in the deck in order for this one to be really good. But that potential is definitely there. And if we get some other 1 or 2 more demons printed, I'm going to eat my words on this one, I guarantee you. But for now, I don't think there's enough support for it in Constructed. For Arena, sure, if you have the draft for it, it's going to be... You need this to do a bunch of stuff for 9 mana in Arena. And preferably it needs to do something as you drop it on the board. Therefore Taunt Demons is going to be what you really seek after in the draft. But if you do have the draft for it, sure, go ahead and pick it. But if you are offered this as one of the first cards and it's a legendary and it's up against many other legendaries, this is going to be really far down the list in order for this one to be good. Because you can't consistently build some kind of synergy in the Arena. A neutral 1 mana 1/1, the Pen Flinger. See that scoundrel sitting there in class somewhere and flicks one of his writing pens, one of his feathers, at some of the other students or something like that. Well, the battle cry when he flings his pen is that you deal 1 damage. So essentially it is an Elven Archer. However, there's a spell burst effect on this one as well, saying that once you spell burst, you have this on the board, you drop a spell, then you return the card to your hand. And it's actually, I rated 3 stars for constructed. That is because we've seen Elven Archer, just the basic Elven Archer card, do something in certain decks, and as a very important card as well. What comes to mind, for instance, isn't this kind of pure Paladin build? It's not going to be pure Paladin. I know, because this is a neutral card, but a control Paladin. The reason why I mentioned pure Paladin at the moment is because in the Paladin era of this expansion, or the meta as it is right now, that is the control build. But for instance, dropping this, I think it's called Librum of Justice, where you equip a 1/4 or 1/3 weapon, something like that, and then you set the enemy board to 1 health. Just of course having your weapon swinging at a minion on the opposing side, of course that's good, but they might still have a bunch of attack, and you might even have more minions to remove. So of course that's perfectly fine, but for instance on the high attack minion you can use your weapon on one of the lower attack ones, and then you drop Flinger, and then that one shoots. It could be behind a taunt, it could be the taunt, or if there's multiples, then this one can target whatever minion you'd like on the other side, and it's easy enough to bring back with some of the buff spells or some of the low cost spells that we're seeing at the moment for Paladin. So it actually allows you to machine gun down a board in the late stages of the game with this one specific card, without running maybe more than just the one. It could be that you run 2, but still Elven Archer only had that effect that you could do it once per card, and this has such a higher effect and such a higher impact than the basic Elven Archer. That comes to mind. There are other applications, of course, some Zoo decks, some Swarm decks, stuff like that allows you to ping. You can target whatever your opponent's face, his minions, and all this kind of stuff. I think it's going to be something that we do run. It needs a bit of support, it needs the right deck for it, but I think it's actually good enough. And for Arena, it's just a solid 1. One drops that you can drop on turn 1, or on turn 2, early stages of the Arena game, but also has kind of a viable effect. In Arena, many times you'll have your opposing minions, the board on your opponent, some of them will be left with 1 health left, because then you might be able to do some value trades. Value trades are a very focal part of the Arena, and therefore it's going to be something that you can counter with the Flinger, and it's going to be a good card to pick. It's not as powerful, but it has an early game and late game effect, and that's why it's rated 3 stars the way I see it. This one I already teased a little bit when I reviewed the Playmaker. Dr. Krastinov. He's a dual class legendary for Rogue and Warrior, and he's a 5 mana 4/4 with the keyword Rush. Each and every time he attacks, so the time at the point of when you drop Dr. Krastinov, you can attack right away, and your weapon is increased with +1 attack and +1 durability. And he will be able to see play just right off to the first day of release of the new expansion. You just drop him in Bomb Warrior instead of Captain Greenskin. Captain Greenskin is also a 5 mana card and a 5/4 pirate, which gives your weapon +1/+1, and that's it. So he has 1 more attack stat, but does not affect the board right away, and he does not have an upside of attacking multiple times, whereas Dr. Krastinov does have that application. So it's a must-remove card. Captain Greenskin is aggressively statted, but not a key card to remove. So essentially Dr. Krastinov would also indicate having taunt. The reason why I only rate him 4 stars, 4 stars is still very good, and there will be some application for him. There will be 1 or more decks that he'll be run in, but it's something where you need to work around the weapon synergies. And it's for both classes. I'm also considering that right now Rogue does not really have all that much. There might be an aggressive Rogue which has strong weapons where Dr. Krastinov will be good. We'll see, but that's why I only rate him 4 stars for constructed. For arena, I have a 5-star rating, but that is very much with rogue in mind, because rogue can equip weapons. There's a good chance that you will have weapons in warrior, but it's not guaranteed in that way. So it's probably more like closer to the 4 stars. Also considering if you want to put this in warrior, if you have the complete correct deck for it and you have like 4 or 5 weapons, yes, definitely it's a 5-star card there. But for rogue, definitely this will always have an effect and is always going to be good for the rogue class in constructed. Not in constructed, in arena, of course. So definitely one of the legendaries that, from my mind, that you wouldn't mind getting upon the release of the expansion. Another legendary, this time a class legendary for Demon Hunter. So it's a 4 mana 4/3 called Star Student Stelina. And she has an outlet. So just looking at the stats, the stat line is not really all that good, but the effect is really interesting. When she is in the outcast position, you look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand, and you take one of those and shuffle them back into the deck. Why this is interesting is because this is a mechanic that has never been explored in Hearthstone before. The only thing that you could affect your opponent's hand with was to increase it. So you gave your opponent some low-cost spells, or you made sure that you had a dual effect where you drew cards and your opponent draws cards. And that's kind of what you could mess up the hand strategy for the opponent. But this one essentially removes a card that you have readily available to play. You get to pick it out of 3 different picks, and you shuffle it back into the deck. I think this is interesting enough that for constructed, it makes sense to rate this 3 stars. The effect is so powerful, also because I haven't seen it before. We just need to make sure that the deck is there for it. This is not going to be run in a Tempo Demon Hunter build. The card simply does not do enough there. So you drop this on the board. It might have been outcast. But there are other cards in the Tempo Demon Hunter, like Skull of Gul'dan, that you much rather want outcast. So it's a little bit more clunky to work with for the Tempo Demon Hunter build. But as we have already seen, as kind of a control Demon Hunter on the rise, has been a little bit since people have been working a little bit more with the Demon Hunter class. And this might suit that deck at least better. I'm not sure if it depends very much on the meta, as also why I rated it 3. It's going to be backbreaking for some of the decks which hold specific key cards that they try to draw through the deck to get, or the hand size matters or something like that. Then this is definitely a card which allows you to mess with your opponent. Actually, there's a bunch of different ways for Demon Hunter to do this with your opponent's mana crystals. This affects your opponent's hand and what they need to draw into, and they also have a lot of silence effects. This might be something that the Demon Hunter can build around, but it is fringe. It's not going to be an auto-recruit in all Demon Hunter builds, but for the aggressive ones, the tempo ones, this is not going to be included, and that is the strongest deck at the moment. But it seems like there's going to be somewhat more support for that archetype coming up in this expansion, and solely based on what I know so far, that's why I rated 3 stars. For arena, it's not going to be doing enough. It's great that you can address this value approach, that you remove some of your opponent's value, essentially diminishing your opponent's hand. That is a good thing, but it is very tempo-oriented, the arena, as it is at the moment. But for the right arena meta, this could be good. But right now, and from previous notion on how the arena works, Start Student Stelina is not going to be doing enough, and there will probably be better legendaries offered in the draft, and therefore I only rate her 2 stars for the arena. Next one, we whip up another Demon Hunter card. It's a 3 mana 2/3 rare card, and just looking at the stats, that's not all that great. But there are some keywords on here. The keyword Rush, so you can do something with the low stated minion right away, but also whenever this attacks a minion, you silence the minion. And there has been some mention around, for instance, that this is the Van Cleef counter. That's true. If you have like a 14/14 Van Cleef on the other side, you drop the Magehunter, you just rush right into him, and you're still left over with another 2/1 minion, which will then be able to attack another minion next turn and silence that. So the upside, the potential for the card is incredibly crazy. This is, in my resemblance, a little bit like Kane Sunfury, the nerfed legendary for Demon Hunter, which is 4 mana, and it was 3/5. Now it's 3/4, and it allowed you to ignore taunt completely. So this is kind of that, because you most likely use case for Mage Hunter will be that you rush into a death rattle, or you rush into a toad, and then you're able to push lethal. So this is much more into the tempo Demon Hunter approach. This might be a one-off in the deck instead of you running a Spellbreaker or something like that, or some other silence effect. This actually does something. There's a minion attached to this, and it allows you to punch through some different stuff. It could also be like a way you replace this if you don't have a complete card protection. Then replacing in some of the meta deck lists where Kane Sunfury is included, you just slot in the Mage Hunter instead, and it has kind of the same effect as you would have out of Kane Sunfury. Except you don't have the charge, you have the additional 3 damage that you can push face. So of course he's better, but it still suits the Tempo Demon Hunter playstyle very well, and it lets you disregard, for instance, in this case, one taunt, where you will then be able to push through and use the board to go face, and maybe finish off the game in that in that way. I think it's going to be good. That's why I rated 4 stars. There will probably be some utility for this in Constructed, the way I see it, and therefore it seems to be a really good card, which has a good effect right away. If it can compete with, that's going to be the interesting perspective out of this for the ones that has all the dust for the meta decks. Will this be able to compete with Kane Sunfury? We'll see. I don't think so, but I only rate this 4 stars, whereas in my book, right now Kane Sunfury is a 5-star card and still is, with the mindset of him being put into a Temple Demon Hunter build. For Arena, silence effects are powerful and strong, also because there's buffs, there's all sorts of different things. It allows you to affect the board in a way where you can kind of push some of this damage, push that into a taunt, and then the rest of the board can do favorable trades. So doing something where you can on your turn manipulate the board state in a favored way that your opponent cannot foresee, which is not possible as this one has rush. They can try to play around it, dropping multiple taunt minions and stuff like that, developing a white board, all this kind of stuff. They can try to play around this, but they can't see your hand, and by that know they need to play around Mage Hunter. And it's only rare, you're going to see it a lot in the arena drafts. So if the Demon Hunter is not pushed to a by the offering rates of the specific cards, pushed in a way where it's hurting the class in arena, as we've seen in this current meta, then Mage Hunter is going to be a really good suit for arena decks where you have your Demon Hunter drafts. So definitely one to look out for, and definitely one to pick 1 or maybe 2 of in your draft. Then we are moving to a neutral legendary, and this also is a completely new mechanic. I was kind of on the fence saying, is this a 4-star or 5-star card? It is really, I would say it's skewed towards that I might want to indicate this as a 5-star card because it really does something for some specific decks. But I can't really go all there because it's going to be suiting certain decks better than others. Specifically, I'm thinking a lot about the combo decks. And I want to talk about this in a little bit more length. So this is going to be a more lengthy review of this one card specifically because there are some mechanics that you need to know in order for this one to, that you need to have in mind when you build decks around this one. So just the card in itself. It's a 4-mana 4/5 stat line. It's perfectly fine. It's a good stat line for a 4-drop. When you drop it, the battle cry triggers, it reorders your deck from the highest cost card to the lowest cost card. So that's the card, what it does. So this means that, for instance, looking at a Highlander Hunter, running a Grand Slam. So after you drop Lorekeeper Polkelt, the next card you draw will be a Grand Slam for 10 mana. It'll push 12 damage to either the board or the face of your opponent. Therefore, this could be used kind of a finisher card in, for instance, the current Highlander Hunter build. But there's other applications. For instance, if you look at Quest Warlock, so you activate your hero power. The hero power, when it's updated through the quest, allows you to draw a card and you can play it for 0 mana. So you drop Lorekeeper Polkelt, the highest cost card. You might have built your deck in a way that you know is going to be Malygos. Drop this, you activate your hero power, you draw a 0 mana Malygos, and then you can drop that one and just shoot face with the Nether Breaths, 2 of those, and a Soulfire. So just through that combo, if you already have a dragon in hand, that's going to be 18 plus 8, 26 points of damage. Just on the same turn that you drop Lorekeeper Polkelt. There's some stuff there I didn't consider because it's too many mana. I think that's actually 11 mana. But what you can ensure is that you can either push for a bunch of damage on that specific turn that you drop Lorekeeper Polkelt, or you can set up the turn next time. What you do need to consider is that it's the entire deck, not just the highest cost cards. So this means that you might draw your Twisting Nether on the next turn because that's an 8 mana card, and so on and so forth. So the other combo pieces, you need to make sure that you already have this drawn, or else that's going to be at the very bottom of the deck right now. So there's some constraints in the card that you need to make sure you play around. But just knowing the exact, or maybe out of 2 or 3 cards, if they're the same cost, that you know this one is what you'll draw on the next turn. That is so powerful. When there's a shuffle effect, that is actually a shuffle. So for instance, you drop this and you do not draw a card this turn, you're just waiting to draw it naturally on the next turn. Then maybe your opponent, he's playing a Bomb Warrior. He swings the Red Caliber at you and shuffles in a bomb, and that is actually a shuffle. It's not going to be slotted into the 5 cost, because that's the cost of the bomb. It's not going to be slotted into the 5 cost range of the deck. It'll reshuffle the entire deck, and all that Lorekeeper Polkelt has been doing is essentially nothing. So anything where you affect the deck, you shuffle some stuff in, or you do like a plot twist or whatever might be the case, anything where you put something in your deck, his battle cry is screwed up, and you will not be able to utilize the battle cry. So that's something worth considering, and also something for you as an opponent against maybe a combo deck where you can play around some stuff. So that's something. But still, I think this has the upside potential of really pushing for some new archetypes, and I don't even see the full potential. I've just been referencing existing ones, but this will open up a broader spectrum of, for instance, combo decks where this is potential, where the potential for this one to actually work is really great. For Arena, it's a slightly lower stat line because you're not really interested in dropping this on 4 exactly. It's a good stat line, but if you know that it's going to screw up your next like 4 turns because you'll be drawing your 10s, your 9s, your 8s, your 7s, and you won't be able to play those, this is very much a late game card in the Arena, but if you just play it as such, it's not going to be a problem. Because if you go to the top deck situation, how many times haven't you been playing an Arena match where you played all your cards and now you're just sitting, oh, I hope the next card that I top deck, that's going to be great. It was a 1 mana card. Oh, no, maybe I can do something. I'm very much ahead on the board, but he's trying to push back. It's a 2 mana card. But you know you have your heavy hitters, your bombs are there in the deck, and you're just keeping your fingers crossed. This one mitigates that situation and is immensely powerful in the Arena if you end up going to a top deck situation. Then you draw all the powerful cards that might let you finish off the game. If you are neck or neck, or maybe a little bit ahead and your opponent is trying to edge back a victory, then Lorekeeper Polkelt will definitely do the job in Arena. So therefore it is relevant, even though it's not as powerful as in Constructed. Next one is actually a neutral legendary weapon, and it's a Scrying Sphere. The card is a 1 mana card, very cheap, 0 attack, 4 durability, and it states at the start of your turn, look at the top card. You can and you can put it on the bottom of the deck, and this one will lose 1 durability. And this is another really interesting effect, like we saw with the previous card, Lorekeeper Polkelt, where you can affect the deck and the sorting of that. Might be a build where this is really interesting to do in relation to some kind of combo build, or if you have some where you need to draw like multiple 9-cost cards or whatever, 8-cost, and you need to draw them specifically in a certain order. Then whenever you might draw Polkelt first, and then it's sorted, and then you draw a card. It's not the one that you're looking for. You can put this on the bottom and then draw the next card. And just as I think there was some kind of animation for it. There might not be. But the way I understand the card, you don't just skip the turn. You actually draw another card. So you put the card that you drew on the bottom, and then you draw the next one. If that's the effect, if that's not the effect, that you just do not draw the card, just put it on the bottom of the deck, this goes down immensely in value. But I'm really sure that's not how it works. You draw the next card, and then that's not the start of your turn anymore, because you already did some interaction with the deck, and therefore you can only do this once per turn. So you can't just shuffle in 4 cards on the bottom of the deck and draw the 5th one. That's not possible with this one. But still, it's an effect that we haven't seen before, and there will be some kind of combo way to build around this. This is kind of my putting out a little bit of faith in the card, saying this is such a powerful effect that we haven't seen before, that this will merit some kind of new deck. And I might fall completely flat on my face here, because it might not even take off. Or it might be something when you are a little bit further down the line, you get the 3rd expansion of the year, you might have enough support for it. But I think there might be enough already, because there's already arguments, for instance, for Quest Warlock. So you can already see some kind of use case for this card already. Therefore it's something that should be powerful at the start of the expansion as well. For Arena, as you can see, I rate it much lower. It is essentially use a card slot to sort the top decks, and just evaluating the effect is okay, so to speak, but you need to drop a card. You need to have the start of your turn to top deck something. But you still, at the very point of the draft, you're already setting up a curve and stuff like this. So it's not something where you will most likely sacrifice another legendary card, which has some tempo effect right away. This is very much a value-oriented card that ensures that the value of the cards you draw are good and relevant according to the turn that you're in. But that is usually mitigated through curve considerations in Arena. Therefore, I do not think this will do a lot. It will not merit, because there's no tempo behind it. You can't attack with the weapon unless you can buff it somehow. And therefore, this is not going to be doing enough in the arena from a tempo perspective. And this is something where you should not pick it at all, because there are more relevant weapons if you're a weapon class, or more relevant cards if you are a non-weapon class. So leave it alone in the arena, and make sure that you, if you're constructing decks on your own, consider this, or if there's a good match and a good win rate, because it's going to be an expensive card because it's legendary. So it needs to find the right suit, the right build, and you need to make sure it's competitively viable either on the ladder or in tournaments before you invest your dust in this. But I think it's possible, and putting my neck out there saying this is a 4-star rating for the Sphere of Sapience. Alright, we have a neutral legendary, Vectus. So probably some kind of professor at Scholomance Academy. But first off, the card in itself. It's a 5-mana 4/4. So the vanilla test, not really all that great. However, there's a battle cry where you summon 2 1/1 whelps, and these are like this, plagued hatchlings. And these whelps, you can't see it here, but they will get a death rattle effect from your minions that has died this game. So essentially, if you sum up the stats, it's a 5-mana 6/6 worth of stats, but distributed along 3 bodies. And in Constructed, you should be able to get like a build around. This is something that you put in a death rattle deck where there's some relevant and significant death rattles. I guess both aggressive ones where you might damage your opponent or summon more minions and stuff like that. So he has kind of a very broad application, but it still needs to revolve around death rattles. And therefore I don't push Vectus all the way up to 5 stars. But he's going to be relevant in decks which has more or less any kind of death rattles, and that is actually some decks at the moment. Therefore, I would not be too surprised if other people rate this 5 stars in Constructed, and I would say, that's fair. It's just how many relevant death rattles will there be for this card to be, or death rattle decks will there be for this card to be relevant? And there are also some other things, like for instance, if you're up against a priest, they might steal one of your cards with Shadow Madness and push into some other stuff. There's silence effects and stuff like this. Therefore, it'll not break the game in any way, but it's going to be powerful, and actually the cost for the card is low enough that it might be relevant as a top off for some aggressive death rattle build, something like that. Really a good constructed card. Just from a stats point of view, if you get death rattles that is beneficial for you, amazing arena card. But just the stats, a 5-mana 6/6 distributed among multiple bodies, are usually quite difficult for your opponent to deal with, and that's why I rated 5 stars there, because just the stats from that point of view is going to be great, and the upside for the hatchlings, as they will get the death rattle effects, are really powerful and game winning on its own. It's a legendary card, you'll be seeing all that much, and I would say that around each and every legendary card, more or less, that we see that will go into the arena, but it's still just a really powerful minion that has little to no downside if you don't have any negative death rattle effects, and therefore it's going to be a really good arena card. So 5 stars for arena. Let's see how many times you'll get it in the draft. We're just wobbling through powerful cards at the moment. So it's another dual class legendary. The card is a 5 mana, 3 attack, 6 health minion. And it's dual class between Shaman and Mage. The effect is it's an end of turn effect. So at the end of your turn, you deal 1 damage to all enemies, your opponent, and all the minions on the board. And this effect, this 1 damage, is improved by spell damage. So for instance, if you have a spell damage totem on the board, it'll deal 2 damage across the board and to your opponent. And just looking at cards that's been used in decks before as a mid-range or control tool, this is just perfect. It doesn't really pass the vanilla test. So for 5 mana, you would at least want 10 points of stats, and this only has 9. But looking at this from an aggro control tool and stuff like this, it is early enough that it's relevant, and the effect is good enough that it will soften your opponent's boards and also maybe swing it back in your favor if you have additional spell damage effects. Minions, a card, stuff like that. So it needs to have a good suit, and the suit for this one is probably not going to be in an aggressive deck. But I think it's so powerful and relevant for each and other archetype, like mid-range and control, that it's something that will be included in both classes. So it's a broad applicability and for constructed, and it's easy enough to influence somehow. And also just the one class, the Shaman class, has a natural spell damage production effect with the totem. It's 25% chance only to get that specific totem, but you might have other totems lingering around or copied the totems or whatever might be the case. Or you just run spell damage because there are other significant relevant spell damage minions in either class. So definitely something you can build around, definitely something that will be a pain for your opponent to manage. If it was the inverted stats, like it was 6 attack and 3 health, it would be easy enough also for an aggressive class to manage that minion, Ras Frostwisper. But it's skewed towards health, and therefore it's going to be sticking around potentially for more turns, but also your opponent needs to invest a bunch of stuff in the minion in order to make sure that their boards are not completely wiped out. So good strong card for constructed, and it's kind of the same for arena. I only rated 4 stars there because it's a little bit more difficult to count on spell damage effects. It's not something that you can build around because the draft in itself, in the nature of arena, is limited. It's random, and it's going to be good, but just not as good as you would have this card in constructed. Again, it's not going to break the arena, even though it's going to be powerful. It is legendary. You won't see it in drafts all that much. Another dual class for Shaman, but this time Shaman and Druid. They share this 4 mana card, which has 4 attack and 5 health, so a good vanilla test. On top of that, there's the keyword Taunt, which is great, and a solidly statted minion for Taunt, but also a battle cry that if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, you restore 5 health. It needs to be said that it's a targeted effect, so you can target yourself with this effect, but you can also target minions. And that could be relevant if you have a minion lingering around there where you can do some favorable trades on the board and stuff like that. However, I only rated 3 stars. I think it could potentially be a solid include in many control decks if you look at it from a Druid and Shaman perspective. There's not any class right now which are competitively viable for a control kind of build in either class. But it seems like at this point in time there's enough cards printed that this could be viable in the upcoming expansion. So it's something that with 3 stars I see this could definitely be included in decks, could be a solid inclusion in decks. But with the build around, there needs to be the deck for it. It doesn't need that much support, and I definitely see, even though it's 3 stars, yes, it can be included in many decks. It just needs to be skewed towards the control or heavy mid-range strategies for decks. Even combo decks might use this because it's something where you can hold off pressure until you actually draw into your combos. So even there's some applicability for this card in both classes. Generally thinking about the expansion at the moment, it seems there's some rather high potential for some really crazy combo decks, because we're really affecting some of the core rules that is embedded in the card game as it is right now, and therefore this might be the expansion where you see the combo decks just go through the roof. But we'll need to see how this actually shapes up. So that's it for Constructed. For Arena, just it's a solid minion, and with the upside, even though it takes effect or it does not take effect, it doesn't really matter. If you also can heal the 5 extra health, that's the 4th star of with the upside for the card. That's the extra 1 star that goes into the arena, because those extra 5 health that you can target, that's really crazy, and something where the upside of the card really pushes it into a level where this is a really good mid-range card to have in your draft, and it's rare. You're gonna see it a lot. A powerful arena card. Even though you do not get the battle cry effect off, you're not too sad about that. It's just a good solid 4/5 taunt for 4 mana. That's perfect. It's really what you want. So I just managed to squeeze in the last real card of the day, which is the Paladin Legendary. It's a high cost cards with 8 mana, 3 attack, 12 health stats. So if you look at, again, I talk about the vanilla test, you sum up the stats and it should amount to 16. Here it is only 15, but the effect that he has is so powerful. So you drop him on the board for 8 mana. That's a lot. But then he has Rush, check, he can do something on the turn. He is dropped on the board. The effect is whenever he rushes into a minion, whenever he attacks, it doesn't have to be Rush, but whenever he attacks a minion, that minion is converted to 3 attack and 3 health. Essentially, it is a hard removal through this card, but it's hard removal on a stick that you can beat repeatedly on your opponent's minions. Not on the same turn, but if you get to attack with this 4 times, you remove 4 minions. It doesn't matter how many stats. There can be a 20/20. It doesn't matter. It'll go to a 3/3, and it'll just be removed from the game. What needs to be considered is that if there's any lingering buff effects, for instance, what comes to mind is a Murloc War Leader, for instance, which has a +2 effect on all Murlocs. The Murloc that you bump into, if it's not the War Leader, will be converted to a 3/3, and it'll get a +2 stats on top of this. This is something you have to think about. Think about the board state and stuff like this, if there's a lingering buff effects and stuff like this. But as a standalone card, this is 4 times removal if you can get it to stick and you dictate the trades, but at least you dictate the first trade. And that is such a powerful effect. I do not rate this completely 5 stars. It'll be in a deck, it'll be tried, it'll be used. It's going to probably not be run in aggressive decks, because at turn 8 you're really the game is more or less decided, and if you get to turn 8 it's not decided in your favor. But for control paladin decks or mid-range paladin decks, this is really powerful, and it's a solid health stat as well. So if your opponent doesn't really want this to linger around, they have to invest so much in removing this, because if you do it correctly with the rush, it'll be a 3/9 on your opponent's turn, and there's a lot of investment in getting this one removed. Also, one point about not making this if it transformed the opponent into a 3/3 minion, for instance, so the death rattles and whatever might be the case, specifically the death rattles, I guess that's what I'm thinking about. If those were not triggered through the Professor Turalyon, Tenured Professor Turalyon, then this would be completely broken. It'd definitely be a 6-star card on a 5-star rating, something like that. But that's not the case, and the card is powerful as it is, and of course it shouldn't also transform your opponent's minions. But cards like legendaries in the past, which transformed the full board into 3/3 minions, this is kind of the same idea. It's a little bit slower, so it's really in those control matchups where there's a bunch, some big minions, some big bombs dropped on the board. It takes care of those. So it's relevant. It's relevant for Paladin. It's relevant in a, as it is right now, pure Paladin build, because it is a Paladin card. But also just from a control Paladin point of view, if you have neutral cards in there, it's still relevant. It's 4 stars for Constructed, and for Arena, thank God, it's a legendary minion, and we are not going to see it all that much. It'll completely screw over your game plan, where you consistently build the board, and towards the late game you drop like a big minion and you can finish off the game. This one just kind of pushes that out the door, and getting heart removal in Paladin, essentially perceiving this as such, that's really powerful, because usually the game plan in Arena for Paladin has been around building a board and buffing the board and building synergies out of having a broad board. And if you have this as a top end of all that, you build the board, and then your opponent drops like a big minion like an evasive Draconid on turn 7, then your turn 8 you drop your Tenured Professor Turalyon, and you just push that one through, and you have a big board left over, and your opponent's kind of like, huh? So that's really a powerful effect in the Arena, and it's going to feel great getting this in the draft, and it's going to feel horrible losing to this, but that is sometimes Arena, and you're not, even though it's so powerful, unless you're crazy ahead, you're not going to be playing around this legendary, but definitely worth picking if you have this one coming up in the draft against other legendaries. This is a really powerful Paladin minion, and you definitely want to go for it. It's probably going to be a very fun run for you to use this as part of the if you get this offered in the draft. So a very good constructed card, a completely crazy Arena card. Alright guys, that concludes the 4th card review of Scholomance Academy. So pardon for the video quality on this one, but in general, I hope you got something out of it. There's a bunch of interesting cards, and the power level of the expansion seems really good. However, we've only seen a third of the cards so far. Only 43 of the cards has been revealed at this point of recording, and we're about to get 135 in total. And we only have like 3 or 4 days left before we have what I expect will be the card dump a week before. So just towards the very end of July, we should have all the cards, and we'll see. We'll push on through those when we get the card dump, and until that point in time, I'll do a little bit more. I'll do more reviews. If there's any questions, hit me up in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer. And I am definitely tuned for the new expansion coming out. Hope you are as well, and see you in the next one.